All right. Good evening.
And we're live.
Hi. All right. Good evening, everybody. Happy Wednesday night. This is Direct Line Live. I am joined tonight by my co-host, Mark Unkefer. My name is Jackie Saxstein, and tonight we are joined over the phone on the move with our very special guest, Steve Cordasco. He is the founder and CEO of Cordasco Financial Network based in Pennsylvania. Steve, how are the roads looking?
Roads are it's a little rainy out here, Jackie, so roads aren't looking too great right now. On my way down to our corporate headquarters in Naples, Florida.
Yep, brand new headquarters that you're opening up down there. So it's interesting. One of the things we were chatting about before the show, you're one of many people right now who's making the exodus out of New Jersey as a state of residence and into Florida for tax purposes, amongst other things. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, really, it's where people are, right? So, primary example would be, that's where people are going to every day. 1,000 new baby boomers are moving to the state of Florida per day from high tax and other parts of the country. So that's where the people are going.
Talk a little bit about that.
And we're there to serve the people. So we have a large number of clients who are in Florida, East Coast, West Coast of Florida. And so therefore we've started our expansion into Florida to better serve them. And it just so happens that Florida is a tax-friendly state. And therefore that's what's driving people to there. So, it's no different than, nomads or, Indians, or through the history of our country. If anybody is allowed to talk history in our country any longer, I still like to talk history and learn history. You kind of went where the food was, where you could get by comfortably. And so, being in the financial planning business, wealthier clients are heading to Florida, and so we will follow them there. And it just so happens that it's a more tax-friendly state, so it all works.
So tell me, Steve, obviously one of the big impetus for this movement that has taken place in the last couple of years has been the SALT tax, SALT limitation on the tax plan, and it passed in 2017. How would you assess that? Is it the SALT deduction? Was that the straw that broke the camel's back, or is it continuing high income tax rates in those exodus states?
No, it's mostly demographics. So SALT probably has very little to do with it, because those in high income brackets, they're not as much subject to the SALT, right? So they're going to itemize anyway, and they'll be above the 20,000 threshold for automatic credits that they get for write-off. Right. So this trend of moving to warmer climates started before SALT, and it just so happens it's a warmer climate with an income tax friendliness. So, for example, the income tax rates have just been going up in certain states. Take New Jersey, for example, which is one of the top states for an exodus taking place. New York is the other big state, California and Illinois. So when you go to Florida, you'll find the West Coast has a lot of folks from the Illinois, middle part of the country, and West Coast. The East Coast of Florida tends to attract New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey as those high tax states. Here is the primary driver for high net worth and affluent individuals leaving to Florida. It has to do with income tax. So the income tax that somebody who is earning a high income, upper middle class, in the state of New Jersey will be anywhere from 5 to 7, could get as high as you hear 10%, but your real effective rate by the time you take the lower bracket and the higher bracket at 10%, it averages out to be somewhere between 6 and 8. So assuming you pay 7%, you make $100,000, or you make $1 million of income, you're paying the state of New Jersey close to $70,000 in tax. Do you know what the tax in Florida would be?
Well, they don't have
zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Zero. No state income tax. And so, that is the primary driver of why people are moving there. You also have demographics on your side because, people in their later years accumulate wealth, and it tends to be people in their later years hit their peak earnings and therefore they tap out. The younger folks, not as many of them making high incomes, and therefore they're not feeling the pain as much. And many of them end up being, Democrat anyway, until they start paying taxes and they feel the pain, and then they start to wonder where their money's going, and you start to get a little bit of a switch over. That's at least the money driver in the politics that is the world I play in. And I tend to find that there's usually a crossover. I mean, I asked a question. How many on the call today? I think there's, 3 of us. Mm-hmm. At some point in your life, you categorized yourself or voted Democrat. Anybody?
Nope, not me. And I've only been voting for 23, 6 years, 5 years. So nope.
Okay, so earlier in my life, I was somebody who was more, the things that were important to me were climate, the earth. I tended to come out of college, not as far right of the aisle that I am now. And so, as I aged and as I got smarter about how our political system works, and I became a business owner and an entrepreneur, it became more apparent to me about, my priorities changed. And so that's what's happened, at least for those going to better tax states. Now, the flip side is Florida is getting a little bit dangerous here. It seems to be turning a little bit purple. And part of the reason for that we're finding is that a lot of folks who maybe worked in government or were school teachers or firemen or policemen have gravitated to the climate of Florida more than the tax need. They're there for the tax need as well because they get a pension from the state of New Jersey and they pay no tax on that pension in the state of Florida, but they're there more for the weather, but they're still voting as if they were Democrats. So it's a little bit of a scary situation.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you, with your beginning demographic being that predominantly baby boomers are making this move to Florida, if that's going to really help Trump with Florida being a key state in November.
Well, I'll tell you this. I participated in what has now been categorized as the largest boat parade in history in the country, and I was in the middle of it in Florida last Saturday. And if you were where I was, or you're where we just opened an office in Naples, Florida, I can't find a lawn sign for the Democrats anywhere. It is Trump, all Trump, and everybody's trumped up. It's fascinating.
Well, Collier County, which is Naples, has I think been pretty much one of the most Republican counties. Well, maybe some of the Panhandle counties, but it is a very Republican county, because as you've said, it attracts a lot of people down from the Midwest, and many of them have been Republicans all along.
One could call it the Brigantine of Florida.
Right.
That's true. No,
well, full disclosure. Yeah, my stepmother still lives in Naples, and my father moved down there in the 80s, and so I'm very, very familiar with Naples.
Yeah, it's really nice. And Jackie, would you call it the Brigantine of? Speaking of, did you say the Brigantine? Okay, so Jackie, maybe you might want to share the story about so in Brigantine this weekend, there was a crowd, and I can't say it was my kids, because when my kids go to the beach, they tend to put their Trump flags up. They were down in Florida, and in Brigantine on Saturday, might have been Sunday, I think it was Sunday, Jackie, somebody had their Trump flag, and they were sitting in a circle with like their friends and a bunch of people, and a woman comes over and says, "You need to take the Trump flag down." And this is on the beach. This is a public beach. And it's like, well, we really don't. We have a right to fly the flag. Well, no, it's offensive to people like me. And I would like it taken down. It's advertising for somebody who I don't agree with. So, Jack, if you want to share the story, knock yourself out. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, so all this took place literally right next to my mom, who was on the beach with her friends. And they were claiming, this is public property. You can't have political signs on public property. You can only have an American flag. You have to take it down because this bothers me and it's offensive. And basically had her own sit-in. and sat right in front of, in the middle of these people's circles, like, screw social distancing, I guess, but was like, where, would refuse to leave. So her friend, Patrick Kennedy, had to come and get her and be like, yo, get out of here, because she got to leave these people alone. At some point the police had to intervene, and it's just like, we've lost the ability to just live and let live at this point. So
that seems to be true. Steve, let's go back to the beginning of the year. In January, the economy was on a roll. We had the lowest unemployment numbers that we had in decades in some categories, for as long as there had been records keeping. And then obviously COVID happened, and we've been on a roller coaster since then. On the other hand, the stock market has pretty much held up, obviously after an initial dip. What are your thoughts on why all that happened? Is it expectation that we'll have a fast recovery? Is it all that money that the Federal Reserve is putting into the economy?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. When the Fed pumps money into the system, it's good for the markets. The markets like it, and that's it. That's the driver here.
Yeah. Gosh.
Now in recent in the last couple of weeks, or actually more recent days, I should say, the tech stocks have been, how shall I say, the beneficiary of a lot of momentum of investor interest, and in some respects the market has gotten narrower and narrower. Fewer stocks have really been benefiting, and then the tech stocks are hitting. So without getting into specific ones, what's your kind of outlook for that?
You're talking about the pullback that's happened the last couple of days?
Correct.
Or are you talking about the fuel of the market up, which was
the tech,
only
well, obviously the tech market, well, we had a period of time in which the disproportionately few stocks were benefiting for the increase. It was a relatively fewer stocks that were moving up the indexes. Typically, they were the sort of large price earnings tech stocks. On the other hand, that seems to have reversed itself in the last couple of days. So kind of what's your thought about that?
Yeah, so here's what's going on there. Yep. So the market really over the last 5 or 6 years has not been a broad market on the way up. We've been in this song and dance now for the last probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years, that a handful of stocks, whether you call it the FANGs or whatever it might be, have been driving the market up, the broader market. You haven't had broad market participation in a while. There have been pockets of it, but not across the board for an extended period of time. So you've had handful driving it. We had a big correction due to COVID. The NASDAQ kind of came fueling out of that. And what happened when the NASDAQ, the NASDAQ tends to lead the marketplace. It did it when we collapsed in 08, 09, and that's what happened. So we've had this run up with the NASDAQ because the Fed came in and said, we're bringing the punch bowl back to the party, and we're going to spike the punch bowl, a little extra juice in there, a little more Tito's in there, get everybody happy. That's what happens when they lower interest rates and they come out and they talk about how they're going to keep money cheap. So go out and borrow, buy houses, expand your business, do whatever you need to do with cheap money. Market got ahead of itself. Here's what's going on right now with the pullbacks, in my opinion. So many people own lifestyle funds within Vanguard or Fidelity and their 401k, and a lifestyle fund has a balance to it. Maybe it's 60-40, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Very few people in lifestyle funds are 100%. The majority of people who have wealth today that have money in their 401ks tend to be baby boomers, so they tend to have a lifestyle fund that might be, 40% equity, 60% bonds. Well, they have to be rebalanced when they go out of balance. So what's happening right now, we're seeing some rebalancing going on in these lifestyle funds, and the amount of money in there is massive. So it's not a bunch of young kids trading on Robinhood that you're hearing and things like that. This is a reversion of mutual fund companies having to get more balance into their mix. So if they're a 60-40 lifestyle fund, they got to get back to 60-40. The equity side, stocks have been running up, so they might be closer to 70%. Bonds haven't been moving up, and therefore they have to take money out of stocks and go into bonds And that's what you're seeing here, in my opinion.
So does that suggest that this is a more temporary, a rebalancing, that once that rebalancing takes place, or once the adjustment takes place in terms of market prices, that it's a phenomena that will not continue? Those we're not seeing reversal of the...
Yes, all things held equal, and no surprises come out that would cause, another shoe to drop. But yes, if all the fundamentals stay the way they are and this rebalancing takes place, then you're going to get that. Now, to get equities to move up again, you got to have money come in to say, hey, I'm now buying at this level. I don't know if that'll happen.
Sure. Now, we were talking about taxes before, and obviously everybody's looking to go into the future. We had a tax plan we've talked a little bit about with a tax cut that went through in 2017. If the worst happens, obviously Biden has some tax changes he'd like to see. Would you elaborate on those? Kind of the impact that they would have.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously you would have to take close attention. He's been kind of cute with his tax plan in that he doesn't want to disclose too much with it, right? Obviously he wants to say as least as possible. I guess he's out of the basement now, and he's got to say something because he was just in Michigan. And what he was saying in Michigan is that, yes, he is going to increase taxes. Here's where the tax increases are going to come. And when he talks about corporate, he's talking about corporate America and the fact that he's going to tax corporate America who sets up headquarters overseas. So that's a pretty safe tax increase, soundbite that he can give to kind of protect himself, to say, yes, I did say I was increasing taxes, and this is your soundbite, which means the average everyday person who's going out to vote can't even equate what that means to them. But for Biden, he's found a pretty cute way to say, I'm going to increase taxes, and then he's going to take the narrative to basically make the poster child of who he's going to attack, corporate America, which, for many out there who probably couldn't even tell you the name of the vice president of the United States, they have no idea what that means. Oh, they're going to tax companies that leave our country. That's a good thing. So, but, what's the tax to the individual? What's the tax to estate planning? I just talked, to someone earlier today, and, there's a lot of folks out there trying to reposition protect the wealth that they've accumulated over their lifetime so that they don't give it back in estate planning or estate taxes. Now, the estate tax threshold kind of went up a lot in recent years, and it will sunset. This is all part of Trump's tax package, and you better be sure that in the form of a debate or anybody who is listening to an open public forum, I'd love to hear what Joe Biden has to say about the estate tax. He's not leading with it, but what will happen to it? What will happen to income taxes? What will happen to not the super wealthy? We don't care what happens to Jeff Bezos. We don't care what Warren Buffett or Bill Gates is going to pay. But what's going to happen to that person who owns a business that has blood, sweat, and tears in that business? It gets up every day at 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, and puts that 12, 13, 14-hour day in, or the person who built their business working those 14, 15 hours a day and was a good citizen, followed the rules, did what they did, saved some money, raised their kids. Is the government going to want to take it and give it to rioters? Take it and give it to programs to support those who don't want to get out of bed? That's the narrative that needs to come out with regards to taxes. But wearing a mask today, you can kind of muffle your words and kind of talk into your hand a little bit and not really get to the meat of the argument and define truly what your new tax agenda is going to be. So the mask and COVID and the left side of the aisle saying we should all cover up and follow certain rules, and those certain rules do benefit them, especially here in the political arena, you're not going to get much clarity. I think he's definitely using his mask to not be as clear to what taxes to the middle and upper middle class mean and he's going to use whatever short sound bites that come out of the side of his mask that the media elects to say they only heard that, right, is what the narrative is now. And we got, he's got to be called out on it. I'd like to see him called out on it.
Now, let me just double back. The current tax regime, obviously they make changes from time to time, but the taxes that were cut in 2017, those expire in 2025. And help me out, I can't remember, is it January 1st or December 31st, 2025?
It doesn't matter. It's a day. So I think if you get Biden elected, he may push to sunset those, right? It's the sunset provision. So I don't know, sunset. Maybe it's probably midnight on the 31st, right? So,
right. I'm sorry. Is it the end of what I was trying to get at? Is it after this current presidential term, or is it?
Yeah, it overlaps. So it overlaps, right?
Okay.
But in my opinion, there's people jockeying right now who have already kind of said this thing's going to end, and it could end sooner. That's right. The sunset. That's when it does end. But I would bet, I think Biden's on record pre-mask and debates when you didn't need to wear a mask, and there was all those Democrats on stage or whatever you call them. On stage, he was pretty vocal about he's going to take all of this stuff and revert it back as soon as he can. It's going to be one of his first votes for Congress to immediately sunset. And if he's got enough votes, it'll happen sooner rather than later.
And of course, that really underscores the importance of what happens in the congressional elections, and in particularly the Senate.
Correct.
So I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about current events and what's been coming up in the news today. So obviously, I think, at least in my opinion, what we're seeing today is the left's attempt to undercut the news yesterday of Trump being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for his work with Israel and the UAE. So what we're seeing, obviously, is that positive news followed up today by what was going on with Bob Woodward, and then some other things about Trump and, following the narrative that because he hated McCain, obviously he hates all soldiers. So what's your take on what we've seen in the news in the past couple of days? I don't know how much you saw about the Woodward thing because you've been on the road all day, but,
No, so you'd have to fill me in, but I would ask you, I'm shocked with that. I would ask you, as someone who's Jewish, how do you deal with that? I have a number of good, close Jewish friends who just, it seems like the Jewish friends I have tend to be very liberal. I don't know where it's come from recently. No matter what positive can come out of Israel, they still can't stand Trump. And it's like, why doesn't he get more support? More Jews. I can't. My own litmus test is showing that's not the case. So
it's insane. It's been crazy to we have that conversation in my house all the time. Even before the Trump presidency, it's crazy to watch how many Jews backed Obama after everything that he did to undermine the Jewish people in the state of Israel and that being the rightful Jewish state. The entire Middle East, with the exception of Israel, belongs to all of the other religions, to the dominantly Muslim population. Why can't Jewish people have one small state about the size of New Jersey by itself? I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the context of a lot of religions. But I think, it's been amazing to see what Trump's been able to do. Obviously, Israel is very fond of him. They named an entire area after him. And just seeing the steps that he's taken, and I think he rightfully did deserve this nomination with what he's doing between Israel and the UAE. All Israel asks, and all Jewish people who love Israel ask, is that we have a peaceful place where Jewish people can call their ancestral home. And so any kind of peace that we can see there is what we want. The issue really with the Jewish Party solution is that as much as we're happy to give a little bit of that land to peace, that's not what the Palestinians are after. They're after eradicating a lot of people fight that. So, I think that this is very much a well-deserved nomination for Trump. way more conservative than the nothing that Obama was nominated for. So it blows my mind to see that so many Jewish people are leaning towards so far to the left, considering the good that Trump has done for Jewish communities and the Jewish people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah.
Now, one of the areas that we didn't talk about that's part of the Biden plan is well, he hasn't precisely endorsed the Green New Deal, but there's certainly a lot of climate change related provisions, including potentially taxes, cap and trade, and what have you. That could really have a huge impact on the economy. What are your thoughts about how that should play out?
Oh, no doubt about it. And that's, that's going to be, I don't know where that's going to fall on the priority list as opposed to taxes, right? So my bet is they go after, more tax side of things, and some of this other stuff I think they can get to later. That's just my view. So I don't think that they're going to want to do much to really, disrupt the good part of the economy.
Okay.
Yeah. At least out of the gate, early on. So, just my opinion.
So obviously we don't have any predictions, and we're not here. We've had shows which have focused on COVID and the health issues, but it seems to me that 4 or 5 months ago we were talking about whether or not there was going to be a V recovery, and at that point we were hoping that V recovery would start a couple of months ago. What's interesting is we've seen real uptick in jobs, and it does seem that part of what's going on is that while we certainly know what's happened to the restaurant sector and the sort of a number of the public-facing aspects of industry, that large parts of the economy seem to have adjusted to COVID and are continuing forward. And do you see some permanent changes taking place? Like, for example, what does this do to the office industry? What does this do to the hospitality industry if people are making sort of changes that could have an impact or have a consequence well after we've sort of solved COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I think some industries are going to change, and be changed for a long time. Does the office environment come back? Probably, eventually. But, there's a whole group of us, myself included. I'm out of the city of Philadelphia and happy to be out, and was frankly able to sublet a fair amount of office space in Philadelphia. And frankly, I'm out for the reasons that I don't believe, I don't philosophically believe in the political leadership in Philadelphia. And I don't think the political leadership in Philadelphia will change. I'll bring that up. That's my home city, right? It's where I went to school at Temple University in Philly. I'm a Philly guy. And I've elected to leave my roots because I think the mayor's inept, and I think we have a DA that's rogue, and actually should be up for charges, to be honest with you, for letting criminals out of jail so that they don't get COVID. But those same criminals are out killing people and hurting people and stealing and looting, but yet police can't do anything about it. So the only thing I can do there, my vote's not going to matter in Philadelphia, so I'm not going to move to the city of Philadelphia. I pay a lot of tax. They don't allow me to vote there, even though I pay tax. By the way, I think if you pay tax somewhere, you should be able to vote there, but that's a different topic, different show. But here's my take. I've elected not to economically pay into a government, a local government like the city of Philadelphia. I don't believe a nickel of my client's money should be paid as tax to the city of Philadelphia, because the city taxes me on my receipts of what I earn from the people that I serve, that I work for. And I don't want that city to get a nickel of my client money. I would be a hypocrite, because I can poll 100% of my clients, and 99% of them will tell me that they despise what the city of Philadelphia is doing, what the state of New Jersey is doing, or any of these states that have rioting that are blue states, that are blue cities, not happening in red cities, not happening in red states. And therefore, what I've learned, the best I can do other than vote is talk with my wallet. And I just took the wallet away from the state of New Jersey and the city of Philadelphia. So with that said, I think that's an important point to kind of take away from this, and to feed into what you're saying is, what happens to that real estate market in Philadelphia? What happens to that real estate market in some of these cities that are having those problems? And I say they're going to be on a very, call it a W with two U's tied together to make it that W, almost like when you were in third grade trying to stay between the lines. It's going to be a tough road to get back to for commercial real estate. Although it's interesting, the commercial real estate market's not adjusting their economics to it. They haven't changed their terms. So if I went out and started looking for real estate in around the city of Philadelphia, which I've done, really the terms haven't changed from where they were pre-COVID. And I think they need to have a wake-up call, because I do believe if you look at what's happening in the real estate market, higher-end real estate in areas like lake communities, the shore communities, those beach communities, the real estate market is extremely hot. There is inflation. Prices are up anywhere from 20 to 35, in some cases, 50% price increases, because people in New York, people in those high congested areas want to get out of there. They want to go where they know they're safe. They want to have an office they can work from in their house. They want to be able to get in the car and go somewhere, maybe go to a local convenience store, or go out and get a takeout bite to eat and not have to worry about getting hit over the head with a hammer or a brick, or having their car broken into, or just frankly walking around being fearful. I walk through the city of Philadelphia and I sometimes think I'm a kind of tough guy. Now, you know what? All I see is two eyeballs under a hoodie, and, I feel like, I'm on the beach and I got to hide my food from seagulls. I feel like I'm being swarmed on. Right. And I think a lot of people feel that way, and the economy is adjusting to that. And I also believe the election numbers are adjusting to, some of the Karens who live in the suburbs of Philadelphia feeling as if they're afraid, where they might have been voting more left than they have in the past. I think you're going to see some of them swing back, because they're not feeling warm and fuzzy right now, having to travel through Philadelphia to get to the beach in New Jersey, or, living their lifestyle that they did by going to the theater or wanting to go into the Four Seasons in the city. They've been uprooted. So a little bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but, I think there's pieces of this economy that are going to take a long time to come back, and you're going to have pieces of the economy that are going to bounce right back. Bottom line is, it comes down to the individuals who work within the industry. Those that are survive will be those that adapt, those that decide they want to work hard. The ones that have been able to get by pre-COVID because, we had a good economy that Trump put in place. Life was easy. I still believe those that can work hard and work smart, no matter what backdrop you're given in a business cycle, they will survive. There's always going to be survivors. There's ones that are going to come out of this a lot faster. And I'm hopeful.
So we did actually get a question from the audience. It should be a fairly easy question, but we had somebody asking us, do you think that people, or do you suggest that people should buy gold with everything going on in the economy right now?
It's always okay to have some gold, but, a lot of people have gold in different ways, right? So the question is, why? So when somebody comes to me with a question, I say, why do you ask? This person's not there to ask it. So there's a couple reasons why people buy gold. One, they think that it will do well from them from an investment standpoint. Okay, gold tends to do well during inflationary times, so somebody might be betting on inflation. But gold can also tend to be a storage of wealth when your cash isn't earning very much. So what's the bank paying you today to put your cash there? Very little. So sometimes putting your cash in gold can help store it, keep its purchasing power. Some people believe civil unrest, buy gold, because gold will always be something that you can use to trade to get something you want for, which always cracks me up, because people who say, I'm worried about one day not being able to use money. Well, good luck with that big gold bar you have in your basement. What are you going to do? Walk into Wawa and plop it on the counter? Good luck with that one.
Well, there is some fear, is there not, with the federal, what we've talked about, what the Federal Reserve has been doing in I guess, effectively pumping up by buying debt and cutting up, increasing the monetary it's reserves, but the scale of monetary support.
Yeah, and so that would lead me to not want to own gold. I would rather own paper assets, because therefore the default factor of that goes down, because you got a backstop, which is the Fed, who can print money. So that's why the markets have done so well. It's because a lot of the credit markets being backstopped, and therefore, you don't have this floor to zero, right? They're supporting the markets. Now, philosophically, whether you believe in that or not is a different argument for maybe a different time, but this is what they're doing. So intuitively, I would say it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be in gold unless somebody's making the argument that all this money being pumped into the system will be inflationary down the road. I would see that being the bigger correlation,
right,
than what the Fed is doing, and therefore a lack of confidence in the Fed. You should have a lack of confidence in the Fed. They tend never to be right, and this will end some way. And one of the arguments is it could end as very inflationary down the road. But you got to remember, it tends to happen when you least expect it.
Now, one of the other fears is the impact that all this debt will have on the sort of long-term prospects for the economy. Obviously, we're focused fairly short-term on the unemployment numbers and the consequences, but we've now seen the overall debt reach a level of the GDP where countries like Japan have seen a real stagnation over a period of time. The debt, obviously the interest rates are very low, but they do need to be serviced. Do you see a long-term consequences as a result of the run-up in the debt that the federal government's taken on?
Obviously, the debt's been an argument since Reagan was in office, right? He was people called him a big spender. But if you go to Bill Clinton, you can grow yourself out of debt issues, right? So, he did some creative things by bringing some Goldman Sachs and Wall Streeters in, right? Bob Rubin came in, and they sort of, front-loaded this thing. They told you could convert an IRA to a Roth IRA, and if you do it now, it's going to save you taxes down the road. But he got the taxes paid today that would have come in down the road. But point is, none of it succeeds without success, and the economy was succeeding then, and we were able to grow through this. So if you believe that Trump can win this election, and we can get some people who will support him in the Senate and in the House, and he can not be so challenged every step of the way and really bring this economy back to pre-COVID and beyond, then, the deficit isn't going to be as big of an issue in the future. The other way you get out of this is to inflate out of it. And some people say, well, how can that be? How do you inflate your way out? Well, if the price of goods and services are going up, most goods and services have a tax on it. So if the tax is going up, it's more money coming into the receivables for the government. They can pay down some debt. So that's what you have to kind of look at. Which will be the case? If Joe Biden gets elected, will he put anti-growth measures in place and view it as, let's just tax more people and, limit some of the growth that's out there? Look, if you can do what Clinton did, increase taxes and increase growth, you might be that there could be some luck in that formula. It's not a formula I would bet on as working. It's too dangerous of a path to take because you could end up in that stagnation place that Japan's in by betting wrong. And I do believe that's the wrong bet in here. Growth is the way out of it. And we were on that path. And if you didn't have COVID, we might have been there. And if somebody can steal the narrative here and say, the left side of the aisle or the Dems overextended, they overreached on just how much we should have shut down for COVID.
Right.
But I don't know. It doesn't seem like this administration is there yet. I do believe it'll be the talking point maybe 3 weeks from now during a debate when it's able to come out. But for now, that's definitely not the messaging being sent. And you know it and I know it, that there's a game being played that, COVID up until riots and showcasing riots and, the white housewife sitting in suburban Philadelphia or suburban New York who just doesn't like Trump because of his bravado and the type of personality he is, once they realize that they need to be afraid for their babies and their children and them going to the grocery store, they'll crumble. They'll be shaken in their shoes and they'll go back to maybe voting the right way. But that's the case, and that's the soundbite that needs to be out there, that COVID and this disease that's out there is being used to scare people. That's my opinion, more than what it should be, because I do believe there are sick Democrats that want to see the economy really struggle because they want more ammunition against Trump. It'll be interesting to see if he can steer the narrative away to say that more unemployment has taken place and more fear has come to you and more businesses have failed because they put too much on shutting things down, and the consequences have been what we're seeing here, and that is less people dying, more overreach, and less of an economy that can get back prior to Election Day. They'd love to hold this thing back, and I would like to see that narrative a little bit more play out. Hopefully I'm answering your question about what the long future looks like for money and investments and the deficit and how that factors in. But there's no doubt we've gotten ourselves deeper into a deficit hole, and the only way you get out, there's three ways to get out of it. You can try to grow out of it, you can inflate out of it. Both of those that can take place, growth and inflation, you get out of it faster. Or the third, which is dire, and that is default, which right. If you go back and listen to Trump in the debates early on, before he was president, somebody asked him about default, and he said so we default and start over again, I think was his answer. You can check into it maybe, but he said something along those lines.
I think the Secretary of Treasurer talked him out of that.
Yeah, I think so.
So we're coming up on the end of the show here. Steve, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up or to mention? Any other final pieces of advice before we close out the show?
I don't. No, this has been a fun show, and I think you guys do good work. And hopefully, the world of money and how money ties into politics is sometimes difficult to pull together. Hopefully, we were able to do that tonight.
My final comment to you is I hope you enjoy Naples. It's a beautiful a beautiful city. I've been going there for a long time. It's a great place, a great part of Florida.
Yeah.
All right. And my advice to you is if you decide to go out and buy a bar of gold, if you're buying it because you're worried about our currency not being worth anything, you might want to buy 1/10 of 1 ounce sleeves, as they're called, because they're the size of a dime, and you can pretty much go anywhere and use them as a form of currency. So I don't know if I finished out my answer on gold,
yes.
But I would not be buying gold bars in here. I'd be buying, a bangle, or just do what they do in India. They wear their gold, and if they go into a store that they need to use their gold, they take a piece of a bangle and they drop it on a scale, and they buy sugar, they buy flour, they buy life necessity items. So if that's the reason for gold, make sure you know the real reason why you're buying the gold. Thank you guys. I'll let you go.
Real. I was going to say, Steve, that's real survivalist advice is to have.
I think my mom likes that answer is if you want to buy gold, buy a piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Steve, for coming on the show. We're definitely going to have you on again when you're in a stationary location. It worked out really well in the interim.
Thank you. And Jackie, to paint a picture, your mom wears gold very well. So I'll have to talk to your dad. She could definitely use more gold because she can definitely find more places to put her gold on her body.
So this is going to get turned into Steve's financial advice is.
Well,
yes, Adam, Dr. Sackstein, you need to be buying Sharon more gold, and if it has diamonds, that's good too. Because here's the one thing that Jackie's mom needs to know: you can get through a metal detector with diamonds and not be detected. So if we're really trying to prep ourselves here, she needs more diamonds as well as gold.
Oh gosh, this is gonna be a fun conversation when my dad gets back.
All right.
So, bye.
Thank you very much.
See you all next week.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you for tuning in.